there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about villains that I love to hate. So last week I put out a video about all of the villains that I absolutely love. So today I'm going to do the opposite and talk about villains in books that I cannot stand, that are just nasty, horrible human beings, and I'm excited to go through the list with you. But before we go ahead and get on into the characters, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and sometimes other days throughout the week. Also, don't forget to check down in the description box for links to my social media and my Patreon where you can be entered into winning book giveaways. The first character I'm going to be talking about is Mr. Dark from Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. This book is a dark fantasy and it follows this evil circus that is run by Mr. Dark. And Mr. Dark travels from town to town, kind of gathering souls, and then he lives off of the life force of these souls. And he's just such an evil, evil man. And he arrives to this small town in the Midwest and he is intent on enslaving the souls of the people of this town, and these two boys kind of have to fight to save the town. And he releases on the town two of his minions. One of them is called Mr. Electro, I believe, and the other one is this dust witch who hunts down the boys who are trying to help save the town. And one of the worst things about Mr. Dark is that at first he is charming and seems to hold some sort of spell or sway over people before using his carnival to enslave them. This book is definitely, I would say, one of my favorite, more classic fantasies and a great book to read around the Halloween season. And Mr. Dark is definitely a villain that I love to hate. Next, we have Sadius from The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. There's a ton of reasons why I don't like Sadius, but the main one is the fact that he is just hell-bent on going against everything that Dalinar is trying to do, what he's trying to stand for. Dalinar wants to unite everybody. Sadius seems intent on keeping everybody separate. He is always sowing discord among Dalinar and then the other princes, and he is just completely against unity. He works with his wife to insert spies into Dalinar's camp. He's dishonest. He tries to manipulate King Elhokar and ends up kind of creating a government position just for him so that he can investigate a charge against Dalinar. And he is just so manipulative and just such a nasty character. And every time that he was in a scene, it just made me cringe. I couldn't stand him. And I will say, what happens to Sadius made me happy. And that's all I'm going to say about it. Then we have Kyle Haven from Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. This is book 1 in the Live Ship Traders trilogy. And Kyle is not part of a Live Ship family. He married into the Vestrit family, so he's technically a foreigner, and he doesn't really understand the importance of the Live Ships or kind of how the trader families interact with one another and the satrap and etc., etc. And the reason that I don't like Kyle is that he's downright mean. He's horrible. He is abusive to his family. He beats on his teenage son. In the first scene where we are introduced to him and Althea, he hits Althea. So he hits women when he feels like they're not acting the way a woman should. And he was trying to put her in her place, which her place was on Vivacia, being a sailor, and he still hit her. Not only that, but he is horrible to his own son, Wintrow. He says and implies things like he doesn't think of him as his son, that he's a disappointment, that he won't stand up to the enemy to try and save his father, and he's always putting Wintrow down. Not only that, but he actually tattooed a slave brand on his son's face and enslaved him to Vivacia. Wintrow, in the first book, we learned that all he wanted to do was be a priest, and he was sent off to learn at the monastery, and his father forcefully makes him become a sailor to sail Vivacia because they need someone with Vestrit blood. He's absolutely horrible to his family. And the worst part is that he thinks that he's doing the right thing. He ends up using Vivacia not to trade goods, but to trade people. So he gets involved in the slave trade and is totally okay with that. So he obviously has no moral compass and does not value human life, whether it's a stranger's or even that of his own family. Next, we have the two antagonists from Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, Mr. Coop and Mr. Vandemar. And they're kind of like a pair of villains that are hunting our main characters, Richard and Dor. And they kind of complement each other. They're both evil. They both have no regard for human life or anything like that, but they're both kind of different. So Mr. Coop is a complete sadist. He is charming, he can act polite, but he enjoys inflicting pain on others. And then you have Mr. Vandemar, who is definitely more open about his willingness to hurt other people. And he eats live animals. Like, he will eat, I feel like, any animal. He doesn't care if it's alive or not. And both of them are just described as just gross and nasty. And every time that they were in a scene, oh, it just made me shudder. I couldn't stand them. I thought that they were extremely creepy, well-written villains, and I feel like I'm not doing it justice trying to explain them. But I really like the fact that there were two villains who kind of work together in this book. I don't feel like we see that a lot, and just the fact that they complemented each other was really well done, and definitely couldn't stand either one of them. Then we have Andros from the Black Prism or the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. And Andros, in my opinion, is a very interesting character. He's a very complex character, but he is definitely very antagonistic. Andros is one of those characters that is highly manipulative. Like, you know that you can't trust him, but he presents situations to you and you're like, oh, that makes sense. He must not be tricking me. But he knows something you don't know and he's going to use that against you. And he's just, oh, he's horrible. And not only that, but Kip in this series becomes part of the Guile family. That's really not a spoiler. It happens in like the beginning of the book. And he is so mean to Kip. He is just horrible to Kip. He says horrible things. He does horrible things. He tries to supplement Kip's position with someone else. And we learn as the series progresses, it's kind of hard to explain this without spoilers, that Andros is trying to insert himself in this political position, and his entire life has been surrounding putting himself in this political position, and he will do whatever he can to get that power. So he's power hungry, he's manipulative, he's a liar, and he is horrible to his family. So while he is a very interesting character, he is extremely unlikable. Next, we have Count Desperrs from An Alchemy of Mask and Mirrors by Curtis Craddock. I just did a video on this about why you should read this trilogy because it's so good. Count Desperrs is not an antagonist that is through all three books. He is more prevalent in just this first book, but he is a noble, and his daughter Isabel was born without the sorcerer's ability of having a blood shadow, and she also has a deformed hand. And at the beginning of the book, it talks about her birth and how her father wanted to literally get rid of her, like saw that she had a deformity and wanted to dispose of her. That is how horrible he is. And he basically, as Isabel is growing up, tries to make her gift manifest by torturing her. And Isabel just thinks about all the times that her father had used his blood shadow on her, which is very painful and it can burn you. And just the fact that he was so sadistic towards his own daughter was horrible. And basically, he just wants to get rid of her. He wants to marry her off. He doesn't want anything to do with her and just has no affection or love for her whatsoever, and was just a horrible character. And the next character is Mrs. Danvers from Rebecca. I just finished reading Rebecca, and I really did not like Mrs. Danvers. I thought she was pretty horrible. She really was mean and unwelcome to our main character, who was taking over the estate, having just married Maxim de Winter. She did everything she could to sabotage our main character so that she was not successful in her role as the new kind of wife of this really established house and man. She purposely put our main character down, saying that she will never live up to Rebecca, the previous man's wife, that she's not good enough. She made her feel bad about herself. And she also encouraged her to commit suicide, which is horrible, saying you are not good enough. You're never going to be good enough. You're never going to fill Rebecca's shoes. So why don't you just kill yourself? That scene was probably one of the most emotionally charged that I read in this book. It made me so mad that anyone would recommend that someone commit suicide because they are not valuable enough in this life. Oh my gosh, made me so mad. It made me hate this character so much. So definitely a villain that I love to hate. Okay, you guys, so that is a list of a few villains or antagonists that I cannot stand. I love to hate them. Let me know in the comments some of your favorite villains that you absolutely hate, and I will see y'all soon in another video. Goodbye.